You hear a number like $300 billion, and it grabs your attention, right? Especially when it's tied to the first new U.S. oil refinery in 50 years. That's the headline that came out of a recent announcement by Donald Trump, involving a historic partnership with India's energy giant Reliance. But when you see a number that big, you've got to ask, what's the real story here?
So let's start with where this all came from. The announcement was made directly by Donald Trump, and he called it a tremendous investment. These are his words, setting the stage for a project that's not just about construction, but one that has some massive geopolitical and economic ripples.
All right, to really get to the bottom of this, here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the announcement itself, then figure out why there's been a 50-year gap. We'll look at the project's details, and of course, we're going to decode that wild $300 billion figure. Then we'll check out Reliance's strategy, and finally, see what the road ahead might look like.
So, let's just let this sink in. For the first time in half a century, the U.S. is apparently getting a brand new oil refinery. The main players in this are Donald Trump, the Indian energy giant Reliance Industries, and a company called America First Refining. And it's all set to happen down in Texas. And this brings us right to the heart of it. A $300 billion deal for something that hasn't happened in 50 years, it just raises so many questions. Our job here is to peel back the layers on that flashy headline and see what's actually underneath.
So why the long wait? You really have to wonder, why has it been 50 years? To really get why this announcement is such a big deal, we need to understand why the U.S. just stopped building new refineries in the first place.
And this timeline, well, it puts it all into pretty stark perspective. The last time a major new refinery went up was back in the 1970s. For the next 5 decades, the industry just focused on making the old ones bigger, not building new ones from scratch. So this project is a total pattern breaker.
It really boils down to 3 huge roadblocks that made a project like this almost unthinkable. First, a mountain of strict environmental regulations made getting the permits a nightmare. Second, these things are just insanely expensive. We're talking $10, even $20 billion to build. And third, with the whole world shifting to renewables, investors got really nervous about sinking that kind of cash into new fossil fuel projects.
Okay, now that we know why this is such a rare event, let's zoom in on the project itself. Where exactly is it going? How big will it be? And what's the strategy behind it?
The choice of Brownsville, Texas was definitely no accident. It's a super strategic pick. It's right next to the Permian Basin, which is a massive source of U.S. shale oil. Plus, it's got deep water ports to ship the final product out, it's already connected to pipelines, and there's other supporting infrastructure nearby. It's basically the perfect spot.
So, to give you a sense of scale, this new Texas refinery is designed to process about 160,000 barrels of oil a day. Now that's a lot, but in the industry, it's actually considered a medium-sized facility. Just for comparison, Reliance's other refinery in India, the biggest in the world, churns to over 1.2 million barrels a day. So yeah, big difference.
All right, it's time for the main event. Let's finally dig into that jaw-dropping $300 billion number. Where on earth did it come from? And more importantly, what does it actually represent?
Here it is, $300 billion. I mean, that's the number that made everyone stop and do a double take. It sounds almost unbelievable for a single investment project. But is it for real?
Well, here's the reality check. Industry experts, the people who actually know about building these things, estimate the actual construction cost is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 to $10 billion. Now, don't get me wrong, that is still a massive amount of money, but it's nowhere close to that headline figure.
So if it's not the price tag for construction, what is it? Turns out that $300 billion number is likely the projected total economic value of this thing over decades. We're talking long-term supply contracts, international trade deals, spin-off investments, the whole economic ripple effect, not just the cost of pouring the concrete.
This brings us to another huge piece of the puzzle, Reliance. Why would one of India's biggest companies, which remember already runs the world's largest refinery, decide to pour billions into building a new one all the way over in the United States?
Well, from their perspective, it looks like a pretty clear 3-part strategy. First, it's about global expansion, planting a flag right in the U.S. energy market. Second, it gives them direct access to all that relatively cheap American shale oil, which they can then export to hungry markets in Latin America and Europe. And third, it's a smart political move, helping to strengthen the growing energy alliance between India and the U.S.
But here's the thing.
Just because this has been announced, it is far from a done deal. This project has a long, tough road ahead of it. So let's talk about the hurdles it has to clear and what it all means for the future.
Yeah, trying to build a new oil refinery today is, well, basically asking for a fight. You can bet that environmental groups will be lining up to challenge it over greenhouse gas emissions. Local communities are going to have very serious, very valid concerns about air and water pollution, and just navigating the maze of regulations will be a massive challenge all on its own.
And all of this leaves us with one final, giant question. Is this project a bold, necessary step for American energy security and independence? Or is it a massive, backward-looking bet on a fossil fuel future, right at the moment the world is trying to transition away from it? Honestly, what this project ultimately represents is a question that history has yet to answer.